This
Order.
conference will now be recorded.
Take a roll call. Jennifer Knott,
Present.
Linda Anderson,
Present.
and George Mason is present. Looks like we have a couple of visitors today. Brandy, who owns the building at 118 West.
Yeah.
I'm not sure
Yes, that's
who
correct.
caller 3 is.
Can you say that again?
I'm not sure who caller 3 is.
It could be me. It's Melanie on the phone here with Main Street.
Okay. Alrighty.
Melanie.
Hi, Melanie.
Okay, recording of the meeting will be made and will be available to the public in accordance with the Open Meetings Act and written request. Had a call to order. We've done a roll call. Go into the items for individual consideration. Residents may speak on action items listed on the agenda. Comments should be submitted to the board secretary or deputy city clerk at fstearns@cityofdenison.com prior to the board reaching this section of the agenda. Resident comments are limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise required by law. Comments related to public hearings, if any, will be heard when the specific hearing is called. First item A, to receive a report, hold a discussion, and take action on the minutes from the September 1st, 2020 meeting. Any comments from anybody? Or changes?
I move approval of the minutes of the September meeting, September 2020 meeting.
This
Thank
is
you.
Jennifer. Sorry.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
This is, hi, I second the motion.
Those opposed? There are none, so the motion is carried. Okay, item B, receive a report, hold a discussion, and take action on a request to repaint the building and wall attachments at 118 West Main, case number 2020-055H. Mr. Medina?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. This is case number 3B. The applicant wishes to alter the existing color palette of the building. Minor alterations and repairs have been previously approved by city staff, and we'll get into some of that here in a second. It's a historically contributing building. We recommend approval of the new color palette, and we can show you examples of what that looks like. And Linda, I know you're calling in, but there are examples of the color palette in your packet that'll help you follow along. So here's the subject property. Great. So here's the subject property here. It's directly west to the police department. This is the color palette. It's more of a neutral gray or grayer type palette from what's there now on the current building. There's a lot of light yellows or peach. There's some green, there's some red. And so now this new palette will take it to a more neutral look. As you can see, they're proposing to use Lincoln Cottage Black, Woodlawn Dewkist, Woodlawn Silverbrook, and Belle Grove Victory Blue. Though it's called blue, it's really more of a gray. Here's the front facade proposed changes. These front columns towards the bottom, those will be painted black, as well as the Woodlawn Dewkist, that lighter gray, almost like a eggshell, I guess, or like a whitish color, whitish tone, will be used on these corner trim, as well as the bottom trim of the window frames. As we move on, in my packet, I outline a little bit more detail on the upper facade. The applicant's requesting to do the cornice trim and upper window trim shall be repainted in a manner which retains the showcasing accent. So when we met with the applicant, one of the things that we wanted to retain on this particular building, these really intricate accents or details along the cornice and on the window trim. So instead of just repainting all that one color, we want to make sure that the new palette will help showcase some of these really delightful features that we have on this building. And I think that the applicant really captured that here. And when I'm done with my report, I will say that she is on the line if you have further questions as well. So here's the side building plan. Again, the color palette or trim colors are all going to match the front of the building. You're going to have a little bit of alternating colors, but it should all mesh well with each other. Same thing with the rear. The applicant's wanting to paint the trim pieces, the Belgrove Victory blue, and the railing, the Lincoln Cottage black. And then of course the wall will be painted that Woodlawn Duchess, which is more neutral, that light gray, whitish color. So moving away from that peach color that's there. There's additional pictures in the packet. Again, we met with the applicant and we feel pretty confident this color palette should serve to, one, retain that historical value that you see on the front facade, should look really nice. And it shouldn't affect the historical contributing status of the building either. So I'm pressing for any questions that you may have. Staff does recommend approval. And as I mentioned, Ms. Brandy Landon, the property owner, is also on the line.
Any questions?
I know in the description that the mural will be retained, correct?
That is
Yes.
correct.
Right,
Yes.
thank you.
Brandy, are you going to do anything to the bricks on the second level on the facade?
No, sir.
Okay. Are you going to do any repairs to the ones that are damaged, or?
I think I have a certificate of appropriateness for small repairs that included some broken windows, some rotted pieces of wood. I don't know that we addressed any of the brick because I didn't see any that were damaged. But if there are, I can definitely get those fixed. I think the only section that looks like it might be is where the old awning used to be. And so there's holes there now, which eventually I would love to put an awning back up kind of in a phase 2 to this.
Very good. Any other comments or questions?
I like it, Brandy.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Can I have a motion?
What is this is Jennifer Knott, and I make a motion that we approve the changes proposed to 118 West Main, the painting and minor repairs.
This is Linda Anderson, second the motion.
All in favor?
Jennifer Knott, aye.
Those opposed? Then the motion is carried. Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you guys so
Thank you.
much.
Thank
You're welcome.
you.
Gonna look great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing the changes to the building. So good luck.
Certainly.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, moving on to item C, receive a report, hold a discussion, and take action on a request to paint the east facade of 400 West Main, case number 2020-056H. Mr. Medina?
Thank you again. The applicant is requesting to paint the previously painted block wall oatmeal. That's the official color. We do recommend approval. It needs to be noted, though, that the color selected isn't a pre-approved color. It's not a historic color. However, we don't think that it's by any means an inappropriate color. We think it's completely appropriate given that the applicant pulled off the metal facade panel on the front of the building. We had a previous discussion and granted previous approval to install that new oatmeal colored stucco along the front facade. And as you can see in the picture here, we have these gaps that are left off from when the metal was removed. You can see that you have a white blocked wall that's kind of striped or banded with that oatmeal stucco, and then red blocks scattered in between. So in its current configuration, it's it doesn't really look too appealing from the curb. So I think making these changes to match the oatmeal stucco with the new paint will really serve to improve the look and feel of the building. Also, in the packet, in my staff report, we note that we'll be keeping about a 2 block or the length of 2 full blocks next to each other, that band here. We'll keep that white. So that way you have a nice white frame or white border around the mural, and that'll help separate that from the building a little bit. So here's the subject property right by the park downtown at 400 West Main. We're present for any questions that you may have, and we recommend approval.
I move to approve the proposed modifications at 400 West Main. Mrs. Anderson.
It's Jennifer Knott, and I second.
All in favor?
I, Anderson.
I, Knott.
Those opposed? Being none, the motion is carried. Okay. Moving on to item E, receive a report and hold a discussion regarding district appropriate paint colors.
It'd be item D, George.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We have a 3D.
Skipped one. Item D, receive a report, hold a discussion, and take action on a request to install window and door trim at 112 South Burnett Avenue, case number 2020-059H. Mr. Medina.
Thank you. The applicant wishes to alter the existing front facade of this building. The lower half of the front facade will be reconstructed to match previous approvals, and I'll show you examples of that here in a second. The building is not listed as a contributing structure. We recommend approval of the changes. And for the motions, we have 2 options here, I think, and I'm happy to discuss and explain kind of our position on why we have 2 motions. First, here's the building. So we're just going right across the street from where we were on the last item, from 400 West Main to 112 South Burnett. The applicant is wanting to install metal aluminum framing. This would be like a dark bronze type metal framing, similar to what we've seen on other buildings downtown, that would also enclose new transom windows as well as storefront windows. So the building's function is staying the same. The structure is largely staying the same. It's still conveying its commercial or retail type use in our historic district. Here's another schematic or framing set. As you can see, there's the door in the center, and then you have some what are like transoms above that. Now, we do have photographs that are inserted in the packet that show that there were transom windows on the building prior. So if you can see my mouse, all of this down here directly to the left and to the right and directly above this door, or all of these doors, were all windows enclosed right here. This shows to be metal. So that would be consistent. We're really just adding a few more metal framing. This band right here, this is stucco. I can't find that that was historically accurate or that that was there prior. Looking on the inside of the building, there were existing frames for transom windows here. So it seems that there were transoms. However, someone went ahead and stucco that in. So the applicant's wanting to bring that back. And here's another picture. You can see that stucco band, and you can even see it kind of drooping a little. Talking with the applicant, it seemed that the transom windows themselves and the framing was supporting some of this brick, which is not good for the building. So putting this frame in there would help them get this building more structurally sound. Here's that stucco up close again. So that's one, they're wanting to take that off and replace with window framing and new transoms. So we recommend approval of those changes. Upon inspection of the building, I did notice that there were these glass blocks on the northern suite. And these glass blocks are found in other buildings downtown. Here's other examples of them being used. This is right next to us here at City Hall by 300 West Main. This is 306 West Main. Doing some research, I found that these bricks were largely used in the early to middle 1900s as part of the Art Deco movement. They've kind of been destroyed or lost in some parts of town, so they're really not as common anymore, but they were There were used. Here's an example of them again as just being well maintained. So we recommend approval of adding the new window framing and the new windows. However, I recommend that we also retain these glass blocks. Looking through the Secretary of Interior's standards and guidelines, item 4 reads, most properties change over time. Those changes that have acquired historic significance in their own right shall be retained and preserved. Item 5 reads, distinctive features, finishes, and construction techniques or examples of craftsmanship that characterize a historic property shall be preserved. So while this isn't a contributing building, I still think in my recommendation that these are historic features which ought to be preserved. I talked to the applicant, Mr. Josh Massey. I don't see him on the line, but I just, I asked him and said, if we can keep these blocks, will this be a deal killer for your project? And he said, no, they planned on taking them out, but I'm sure we can work something out and figure a way to try and preserve them. I wish he was here, but he's not on the line.
So these are the glass blocks that were mentioned in its request, and that's where they're going to be, is alongside of those doors?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, reframe the question. I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Where are I know he mentioned using glass blocks, but just where are they going to be used?
So the applicant isn't proposing to use any more glass blocks. The window framing that's going in with the windows, if you see here, this bottom wall is going to retain, that's going to stay there. It might be, it will have to be reconstructed, but this will largely be the same product when it's done. And there would be window framing here as well as above the doors. And so if the applicant were to do that on the far northernmost suite, you would lose these glass blocks.
So that is on the street side.
That is correct.
I've never noticed that as many times as I've been by that building. Huh.
Yeah, it's on the, I might be able to get a Google Street View, which would help.
It's the end closest to the park, right, Bill?
That's correct.
Okay.
The first door from the park. But it's the only one with glass block, right?
Yeah, that's the only suite with the glass blocks. They might have been at the other locations before, but I couldn't find evidence of that.
Okay.
Now, I do want to just mention that we have seen this before in other buildings downtown that we've recently worked on, and we've done everything we can to try and keep them. Those glass blocks are pretty rare and expensive if you do find them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it was.
Right here, this picture's really bad. Yeah, that's not helpful. I'm sorry, but it's right here.
That's very clear, Bill.
All right.
That's okay. Do you have any more to present, Mr. Medina?
No, sir. The only other thing I'd like to mention, of course, we're going to try to provide as much flexibility and work with the applicant as much as possible. If this body decides to retain these blocks. The other challenge I see coming is this framing that might have to be retained as well. I don't know if you'd be able to go in and the applicant would be able to go and install metal framing in these glass blocks or between them.
Unknown. Any questions or comments? Jennifer or Linda?
The overhanging element that's in the oldest picture of that kind of a sort of like an awning, but it's more just like a suspended covering. Are we looking at something like that being replaced or retained, repaired? Just a flat facade, right?
That's correct. That awning that's in that picture or that overhang, the canopy, that's no longer there.
So that's not going to go back again.
No, there might be a way to attach it, or there would always still be a way to attach another canopy or awning, because if you look at those cables, it looks like they're drilled in or tapped into the wall further above where the windows would be. So if the applicant
Exactly.
needed, look, you can even kind of see that right here, where they would go.
So for now, we're keeping a flat facade without that overhang.
That's correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? Can I have a
No.
motion?
I move to approve proposed facade changes at 112 South Burnett as presented by the applicant. Oh, do you want me to do, would we rather have the recommended motion? Excuse me, I didn't say those other words. I move to approve the proposed facade changes at 112 South Burnett with the condition that glass blocks located on the northern end of the facade remain intact if possible.
This is Jennifer Knott, and I second that motion.
All in favor?
Jennifer Knott, aye.
Linda?
Oh, Anderson, aye. Thank you, George.
Those opposed? So there are no opposed votes, then the motion is carried. Thank you. Now we can move on to item E. Receive a report and hold a discussion regarding district appropriate paint colors. Mr. Medina.
Thank you. So Ms. Donna Dow, our Main Street Director, has been working very diligently and hard on communicating with our state historic partners down in Austin. What we've noticed is that internally, we wanted to try and come up with a mechanism or a better strategy of approving and identifying what is deemed an appropriate color or color scheme or color pattern for a particular building, and just give us some more structure to that. So I just wanted to give you a quick update that we're looking into that prospect. We're going to be collaborating internally, myself, Ms. Donna Dow, our city manager, to come up with a plan. And we'll, of course, share that as we move along. We've been receiving some feedback from Texas Historic Commission, and all that's under review. And if you have any feedback or input or guidance that this body would like to see, we're happy to try and incorporate that as much as we can, as we're still in the early and preliminary stages of this new project.
Should we contact you via email or?
Yeah, that would be fine. If you have any ideas, feel free to send them along.
Okay.
We got some general guidance from the State Historic Commission, which we still need to discuss internally, but some of the guidance we received was really helpful. They recommend that the main body color of a building should be about 60%, with major trim being about 30%, and then smaller accents about 10%. And then once we have these three colors identified, we can look at what's going to work for the neighborhood, what those percentages ought to be, and what those colors what might be appropriate. So we're still working on that.
Good, good. I think that'll be a good step forward, because one of the things that I had trouble with was trying to decide what colors are appropriate and what colors are considered historic. So when we have somebody come to us like Brandy did, we need something to show her that, this is not a good idea.
And Donna, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what's happening down in Austin and their guidance is they're moving away from specific historic colors being identified, and rather just kind of devolving back to what each main street or what each community is going to work for their city. Was that kind of what you gathered as well?
Yes, I definitely think that each community does something different. And one thing that's been challenging with this virtual meetings and virtually trying to help customers is the lack of it being online. So that would be helpful. as well, I think.
Well, Donna, I appreciate the work that you're doing. It's going to be very helpful to us.
Agreed. Thank you.
One of the things that I ran into, I went down to Lowe's to talk to the people in the paint department, and they said, we aren't participating in that historic color program any longer, which kind of shot down anything we were using to point out to residents what is considered to be an historic color for the area. So this hopefully will set that straight.
Agreed.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Is it appropriate to bring up a couple of things right now that aren't on the agenda?
Fanchon?
We maybe could talk about it in staff updates if it has anything to do with any of the general department updates that we're going to discuss in item 4A. Would that work, George?
Well, it concerns a couple of properties and what's being done and what has been done and what hasn't been done.
Yeah, I think that might fall into general department updates if we're just giving staff some ideas or something to follow up on.
Okay. All right. Well, moving on, we're going to move on to staff updates. Receive a report on general department updates. Mr. Medina.
All right, I got a new slide for a staff updates. This item here, let's see. Oh, I definitely wanted to update the board. Yesterday, our city council has appointed Rhonda Bourne and Bob Alexander to the Historic Preservation Board. So we have
Awesome.
5 members.
Finally, we have more than 2 members to vote.
Now somebody can be absent sometimes.
That's correct. So Fanchon will be working on getting them sworn in and providing them the same information and packet that you guys have about conflict of interest and so on. So expect to have 2 more chairs filled at our next meeting, which will be really exciting. I'll be reaching out to them soon.
Excellent. Thank you.
Oh, yes, ma'am. We're just as excited as everybody is. So everyone else is. So those are the only updates I have, but I'm happy to discuss other projects or whatever else the board has.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you about were some other improvements being made to 400 West Main. I know that the owners have painted 3 of the false windows with different color schemes. Actually, they painted 4 of them. And I don't know if they've selected one or not.
Yeah, so I got off the phone with Tony Kai about 15 or 20 minutes right before this meeting. I looked through our notes and our previous meetings. They were approved for those colors. However, they're trying to identify which of the trims or how they want to trim out those little fake or faux windows. And I think the applicant's out of town, so that's why they've kind of stayed like that.
Okay.
However, the new trim will be painted. It will happen on all 6 of those faux windows. It won't be interchanging how it is now.
Right. And regards to the awning, are they going to be painted or are they going to remain where they are?
So they did receive approval to paint it noir, or that black color.
Mm-hmm. Right.
However, again, actually that's Lincoln Cottage black, in noir. However, talking with Tony Kai, I think they're just gonna leave it unpainted for now and just make any minor repairs as needed, which they can do. You know, they have approval to paint it black, but if the applicant decides they just wanna keep it metal, they can.
Okay, very good. The other thing I was questioning was down in the 200 block, I think it's 218, that they had painted the architectural detail above the windows black. And I didn't think that's what color they were going to use there.
I'd have to go back and see what was approved. This was it's a martial arts studio, is that right?
Yes.
So this metal panel was removed and then they put stucco, and what you're saying is they used black and they might not have had approval to use black. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. And they're the same as the arches on the building east of it.
Okay.
And they painted the bulk of those architectural details above the windows black with, I think, some red coloring in the smaller details. And I thought they were going to leave them an oatmeal or white color, but apparently they didn't.
Okay. I'll look into it. I know for a fact this one went through and got approved by this board. So I'll have staff reports and exhibits to go back and review.
Okay. That's all I had questions about.
Okay. I'll follow up with you, George.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Anyone have anything else?
Yeah, this is Anderson. I note that significant work has been done on 519, the Salem building exterior.
Yes, it has.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. I meant to add pictures into the slide. Robert Lay, our code enforcement officer, was over the moon when he saw those changes come in.
Right. And it seemed to me, I went by several times and looked at it, but it seemed to me that what was actually going up there was of a higher standard than we had discussed at prior steps in the process. For instance, it looked like the brick might be rendered actually more stable than some of the options we'd looked at. Do you think that's true, Bill?
I haven't gone and inspected that yet. What I'd like to do, though, on some of these projects, especially if they're going kind of above and beyond what we might have expected, maybe we can start providing updates on before and after projects as some of these buildings have started to get updated. I think that'd be good to showcase a lot of the work that y'all are doing and that we're doing here in the department.
That's a good idea. There's another building kind of like that as the one next to the old Denison glass building that was going to be stuccoed, and it doesn't look like there's been any movement on that at all.
Down on the 600 block. Also,
Yes,
point out there's more of those glass blocks right there.
Right.
Cool. Let's see. Oh, too far.
And Bill, what's the update on that demolition by neglect building down there in the 200, I think, where the computer service company is?
Yeah. So I think that the previous owner recently sold it. So there's a new owner, and our team is working out a meeting date and time with the building owner so we can bring them up to speed and understand their intentions with the building and what we can do to fix it.
I believe they're already working on it.
Oh, yeah?
They have been.
And I actually showed that building because I know somebody who knows the new owner, and they said, hey, you know, if you have somebody wanting a building downtown, he may sell it. But while we were meeting with him, he said that he had lots of plans for it, to renovate it and get it. So his intention, if he keeps the building, is to renovate it, as far as I could tell.
Good.
But it is on the market.
And we are still but we're still left in the situation that is essentially unresolved, and it's nobody's fault, but that, you know, there are buildings on either side that are compromised, and there's no way that we can speed up the process by trying to get somebody to buy it and start renovating it. But it is something that obviously we all want to be attentive to.
Absolutely. Donna,
And Jennifer, you just need to start talking about what a prize it's going to be.
Well, and I'd like to know what he's going to do to it,
Right.
because it's a little overwhelming. And if he's willing to take it on, I think we need to encourage him to do that, because I think that may be the trick is finding somebody else who's willing to take it on.
Right. Right.
So, and I don't know, because it probably hasn't hit CAD yet.
Getting a tour of Main
His
Street.
last name. I just know his first name is George. George, not you, George. Somebody else, George.
Definitely not me.
Well, anyone who had a look at it would realize that the challenges were formidable and that the expenses would be huge. And what we can do is just really hope that somebody is willing to step up by themselves or with partners to bring that building up to snuff, because it's a great building and a great location and we need it.
Well, and there is a lease. He raised the rent and signed a new lease with the tenant. So it's making income. So they could work on it and still, you know, they could work on the upstairs part of it, work around James, and still make a little money while they're working on it.
Right. Okay. Well, keep us up to date on that, will you, Jennifer?
If I get new updates, yes, I will stay on top of the sale part of it anyway.
All right. All right.
Okay, anyone have anything else to bring up?
There being no other business, I move that the meeting adjourn. This is Anderson.
This is not, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thank you.
Second.
Bye.
Aye.